Pretty much the definition of a bear market. People sell into news. This at some point this will turn around. We don't know when, but it will turn around. But what's the point in using all this AI to enhance things if you haven't got anything to enhance? You still need the metals to build the cars to make, if you want to make a better car, you still got to have the metals to make the car with in the first place. So everybody has to come back to basics sooner or later. And as we know with the, for example, with the copper market, nobody knows where all the copper is going to come from in the next 10 years.
And joining me on the podcast and on video, John Meyer, mining analyst, partner at SP Angel, in his habitat, in his own environment there. And while some would call that clutter, John would say it's a lovely collection of things from the years gone by, including a little Concorde plane there. In the top left there, have you read all this? It's almost like in an archaeologist's office. That, John, you got things from everywhere, haven't you?
Well, and hope maybe one day somebody will dig it up and analyze it. But yeah, I do like to collect things from around the world, as one does, especially on field trips, particularly in Africa. Yeah.
Have you got any gold in there?
No.
Gold nuggets. It's hard getting those through security, to be honest. Okay.
I have a fake gold bar from when I worked in a gold mine in South Africa, but it is a fake, not a real one.
Fake? What's the point of having a fake one? Anyway, John, off the top. Do you know what? I read the sort of first few lines of your newsletter this morning, worth subscribing to, but it's an interesting headline because it says luxury brands discount products at an unprecedented rate in China, in a sign of a waning local consumer spending. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because you realise, a lot of our brands over here, especially Burberry and all that, were doing very well in China and took a bit of a hit. And so you would assume, and I assumed before this is a bit of a worry about people not spending in China and feeling the pinch. But well, is that the reason behind it or not?
The Chinese people they've been put off anything ostentatious by the Communist Party. President Xi has made various pronouncements. I mean, one of the big ones was that property is for living in, not for speculation, for example. And if you remember back a few years, there was a lot of examination of officials with wearing suspiciously expensive watches. Because they, once in a while they have a big anti-corruption campaign and start cleaning things up. So I think, yes, nobody wants to be showy at the moment in China. And there is a degree of they're definitely saving at the moment. I mean, what we've heard is that they're actually looking at buying luxury jewelry because it's more of a store of value. Yeah. So they're going off buying lab-grown diamonds, for example, and looking to buy more of the real stuff. Now, that's quite good news for the diamond market. But what it tells us is the Chinese people they're kind of concerned about where they store their money. China is quite like America in that they have to pay for their own healthcare, for example. There isn't much of a social security service. In fact, I think there isn't anything. So the support has to come from within the family, and they're concerned about where they put their money. There have been a number of scandals with financial institutions in China. In fact, there was one that made Bernie Madoff look like like quite a small deal. So yeah, I think the Chinese people they're squirreling their money away. They're buying gold. We saw the gold price lift quite dramatically a little while ago. That was driven by physical and futures activity in China. Because of course, if you can't get hold of the physical gold, another way to buy gold is to buy gold ETFs or to buy gold futures. And generally, if you're looking to protect your money and store money away, buying equities or commodities is quite good. Okay, at one end of the scale, you buy bars of gold and bury them in the garden. At the other end of the scale, you buy perhaps gold futures. But it's much harder for somebody to steal or take away your gold futures than to take away cash in your bank savings account, for example.
Yeah, but in China, I assume there's not many gardens anyway. There's more high-rise flats. But I mean, That is a bit bearish, though, isn't it? Because I mean, you say equities. I know, Chinese. When I last read it, the exposure to the equity market wasn't very large. Like you said, traditionally it's been property, but now it's not property. Like I said, it's probably gold, and maybe equities last or after that. But I mean, that's quite bearish, though. When you had a population of what is it, 1.8 billion now, people almost saving rather than spending, that'll have a major impact on economies around the world, won't it?
It does. There's been a huge amount of investment in China in electric vehicles.
Mm.
And the reason I say this is because I think quite a lot that didn't just come from the state. That came from ordinary investors saying, yeah, this is great. We've got lots of companies here that can produce fantastic looking electric cars. And I mean, I don't know how many there are. There's 20 plus new electric vehicle manufacturers in China heading onto the sort of the world stage. Um, and with lots of punters behind them. I mean, it's been in the way that we had the dot-com boom over here in the West. They've all been piling into this. Of course, we've now got the AI boom going on in the United States, or in fact, a lot of UK investors involved with the Magnificent Seven and that sort of stuff. And I think that's actually what's bled a lot of liquidity out of our markets. Strange enough, in that people investing in government bonds for the high yields and into these giant US tech stocks.
And they are giant. I looked at this yesterday because Apple's on a big run. It had a dip, and then that's the price of gold. If you're on the video, look at the chart, and it has it peaked out pretty much at 24.40. It's now at 23.36. It's having a bit of a consolidation. But Apple, right? The size of these companies are phenomenal, and I don't think people understand how big they are. Let me just get Apple up here. Let's see, it had a dip recently down here to almost $164. Now 214. Now Microsoft and Nvidia are all above $3 trillion market caps. Now, to put that in context, right? Now, they said largely those three are based on the AI. I mean, last week they put $1 trillion in value on the market caps. And if you understand how big that is, for example, just even one of these stocks, so it's altogether worth about almost close to 10 trillion. Now, the UK GDP in 2023, that's the entire, goods and services produced, the cost of that, the total cost of that, amounted to less than 2.3 trillion. So one of these companies is valued more than the UK GDP. And I'm just, a little part of me is worried, saying, okay, there's a lot of money inflow. But what happens if AI doesn't live up to, the hype and all that stuff? Even if those three stocks start rolling over, that's a lot of downward pressure. It's huge. You're talking like, three countries the size of the UK rolling over pretty much. That's mad, the size of them, isn't it?
Well, remember these, the thing about governments is they have social welfare costs to manage and healthcare and stuff like that. Nvidia doesn't. All it has to do is work out how it grows and looks after its profit. It doesn't have the rest of the stuff. It doesn't have the massive cost base to support, and that's why it's so valuable. And I went to a presentation by Capital Economics in the week, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind my saying that a lot of the presentation was focused on growth of the US market and earnings growth within the US corporate base. And a lot of that is seen as being led by the Magnificent Seven and by the impact of artificial intelligence on kind of everything else. And a learned gentleman stood up at the meeting and asked it. We made it a very important point. He said the thing about AI is that AI companies are working to help everybody else. So he didn't see it as they didn't see the potential for a bust, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Yes, it feels like there's a bit of a tulip bubble developing in AI, but because these companies are really just working to help everybody else, he didn't see it kind of unraveling the way that sometimes these things do, in the way that there were quite a lot of dot-com companies that didn't quite make it. I mean, there were some brilliant ones that did, but there were a few that didn't. People don't see quite the same risk with AI as with other technological developments.
Yeah, it does enable, I suppose, in a certain way, like I say, it will enable small and medium-sized businesses to become more efficient. Like I say, even creating, content and all that stuff, you can use AI a lot faster, and so it will help in that respect. In fact, let's do a survey of two here, John. Is AI touching your life yet? Your life yet? Are you using it in any way?
We tried using it for our morning note. Actually, we tried to get it to write some headlines, and it actually came up with some really interesting comments. But
Yeah,
each time the comment was diametrically opposed to what we would have normally written.
yeah,
So we thought, yes, okay, it's interesting, but it's got some way to go. I know a couple of our younger lads have used it for populating tables with data, for example, and that's
yeah,
helped them advance the work that they do, which is quite nice. But everything has to be rigorously checked.
yeah.
I guess it takes some of the more mundane tasks away, which is quite nice. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've been playing with it, but we wouldn't rely on it yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I've used it, personally. I mean, for like spreadsheets, for example. I was trying to figure out a formula, a quite complex formula to give us the scores, this one thing, and I couldn't. I was getting it wrong all the time. So just put it in a chat GP, come up with it in seconds. Wow, okay, that's good. And also made Zoom, like recording this on now. I've enabled AI, and what it does is break it down into a transcript as well afterwards. And that's amazing. So it is touching people's lives, and I think to a certain extent, it isn't like predictive sort of. On emails and that now, and Google and stuff, and Hotmail, whatever, or Outlook, that's starting to come in, isn't it? Suggesting sentences and all that stuff. So it is, infusing. It's almost, absorbing going through the society. Anyway, let's
Well,
this
well,
is this is the joy.
while we're on the subject, Justin, the interesting thing is somebody asked AI to develop a new electric motor that doesn't use rare earth minerals, for example. And
Yeah.
apparently the AI program has come up with something quite interesting. Now, the
Wow.
proof will be in the pudding. I don't think the world's going to change radically in that respect for the next 10 years. But AI is being used to develop solve engineering issues and to develop new materials as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's got to be a lot of progress in this area, but it is going to take, as we know, these things take time. They normally take at least 10 years to bring in.
Yeah. What this is Copper Futures price here, John. I mean, you often say it's related to China and the strength there and global outlook. It has had a good rally, let's be honest. I mean, in the last when is this? Since almost when we start of the year, say it went originally to what 40%, but now it's up 18%. So it's come back a bit, but it's spiked out there. Almost like it's odd that would happen in a commodity that it spikes out and just doesn't consolidate, just comes back down that much,
The
What's
market
happening
got a
there?
bit ahead of itself. I mean, just about every fund, well, certainly all the commodity funds went long.
Yeah.
Um, and having realized that they'd all gone long, some of them decided to go short. It's
Yeah.
one of those things. It's like, oh my God, everybody's done this. And the reason why they started to go long in the first place is because you can see China producing an awful lot of electric vehicles. They have this huge drive to do everything that's green tech. So we're talking hydropower, solar power, wind power, and they want to make all the green tech for the rest of the world as well.
Yeah.
Which is now why we're seeing the EU bringing in tariffs on EVs, for example, on
Yeah, there's
Chinese
tariffs
goods.
everywhere, isn't there? It's like Biden, they're going for 100% tariffs. I mean, the EU, I think it's 25%, isn't it? So, but but it's just, but you realize China's are winning this to a certain extent because, and I was listening to a guy, I don't know, it's Ready 5 Live, but he's based in China and he's in the EV market. He was saying, they're everywhere now, EVs out here, because essentially they're so cheap. They're not expensive, and that's the problem in the Western world. All these Western car makers, Mercedes, Audi, BMW, they're making quite expensive cars. Even British Jaguar and all that stuff. Because in China, they're comparable with normal cars, and he said you go around the cities, it's quieter, and even you can see the sky now in certain cities. So that's quite amazing.
Well, they had terrible pollution problems, much worse
Yeah.
than we had. I mean, but effectively comparable to how we were in the Victorian era with the London smogs, and really not good. So that was a very important thing for the Chinese government to start to solve, and of course they saw that as an opportunity. Here we can convert we don't want to buy in oil because the Chinese never really want to buy in anything unless they can help it. They buy in a lot of oil because they don't really produce oil and gas themselves. And they'd much rather not do that. So going electric makes so much sense for them. And I think that 40% now of vehicles sold in China are EVs. And they're developing it really, really fast. So they've seen an opportunity to get ahead of the rest of the world in EVs. I would still say Tesla is the leading electric vehicle producer in terms of quality and the fact that a Tesla does what it says on the tin, whereas some of the other car manufacturers are really struggling. I won't name names, but some of the Western guys, the batteries aren't performing as well as they should. And they need to solve that problem.
Well, name names. Who's having a problem with the batteries then? Because it's not going to be a secret, is it? Who like?
Well, I've heard this from one or two, shall we say, individual consumers. So it's not fair to tar a company with just on
I'm
a small.
sure they can handle it, John. Come on, even if it's from one or two. But I'm assuming that all batteries suffer in the winter, though, and that they will degrade a little bit their performance.
Yeah, so well, for example, a friend of mine has a Panamera. It wasn't doing as well on the range as he had hoped, and another friend of mine has a EV Mercedes. Again, hasn't performed as well. Whereas people with Teslas seem to be very happy with the performance. I'm sure not everybody is that way inclined, but these things are important. If you buy a car, it's a big ticket item. You want to be sure it's going to do at least close to the range that they were suggesting.
Look at Tesla share price though. It was literally it was $413 November 21, and it dipped 74% by January 2023 to $100, and now it's at 182. So it's not bad. So it's still 55% down from its peak, and still in a bit of a downtrend, even though they've just approved Elon Musk's £56 billion wave package. That's unbelievable. 56 billion. And some people were saying they were complaining because they were laying off 10,000 people or something it was. I can't remember the numbers. And yet he was receiving a pay package at 56 billion. Okay, that is high, but those employees they're laying off didn't create Tesla. They're helping the company, yes, but they didn't actually create Tesla itself and create a huge amount of value. And if we scroll back here, you can see Tesla, back in 2019, it was $13 a share. So even where we are now, it's almost it's a 15 bagger. So you can see.
Remember, he's got to pay for Twitter, so
yeah, exactly.
That's quite a big bill.
I'm sure. Yeah, how much was that? That was like 47 billion, wasn't it?
Yes,
they
exactly.
Way overpaid for that. I know. Okay, let's look at some individual companies. John, let's go in the alphabetical order. In fact, first and foremost, Blencowe. Let's start with B, because someone said, can you ask John to mention Blencowe? I don't know if you're obviously aware of them, but I don't know what your thoughts are on Blencowe. Do you know much about them?
Yeah, we've been looking at them because they signed a deal with Jilin, a Chinese graphite carbon anode company. So Jilin are taking 50% of their large flake material from the mine in Uganda. They're not up and running yet, but it looks like a sensible project. We like Uganda as a place to operate, and yeah, we thought that again, when you're in we've been doing a lot of work with some graphite companies, and actually getting an offtake agreement is difficult and incredibly important. So they now know where they can sell the majority of the value of their product, and that's really important. So the good thing about this mine is it has a lot of large flake graphite. Now, in an ideal world, what you will do is sell all your graphite for battery anodes, and you'll get a really good price for that. But the fact is, there's a big market for industrial graphite, and so if you can at least sell into the higher value end of that with large flake graphite, then at least you're off to a head start. So the Omcross mine, I think, will do quite well. I mean, it still needs to be financed. There's still a load of work to be done, but this is a very important step forwards. And when you look at the Blencowe market cap, I mean, it's tiny. It wouldn't even pay for Elon Musk's lunch, would it?
No. But if you look at that, so they're saying The pre-feasibility study, or the PFS, easy for me to say, envisages Orm-Cross initially delivering 50,000 tonnes per annum of the concentrate. So the company will have up to 22,500 large freight capacity to sell still. So yeah, it's a good start, isn't it?
It's not the world's largest mine, but it is a good start, and there's plenty of value in there from an investor perspective.
Yeah.
And size is important in this market. You know,
Oh, I
the
say,
anode
John.
guys, the anode producers won't take you seriously unless, you know, you can get up to about that sort of 30, 50,000 ton level.
Yeah. Well, arguably, size is important in many different aspects of life, as we've all been made aware. Okay, so let's start with Anglo Asian then. Some news out there. Double AZ. Just remind us, what they do, John, and what's the news?
Anglo-Asian, they mine gold and copper in Azerbaijan. In fact, they are transitioning towards being much more of a copper producer going forwards. And that's because of the new mines that they are getting ready to develop. So the important news in the week, two pieces of news. One is that the government, there'd been some protests over the raising of their tailings dam in the Gedebek area, and they've been using this tailings dam for many years. In fact, I've visited it a couple of times, and there were some protests. We think those protests were stirred up by somebody with, shall we say, for other reasons. The government has now examined all the engineering aspects of the application to raise the wall for the tailings dam, and has said, no, this is fine. Carry on, guys. Just you restart mining and get on with it. The next move, of course, will be to develop a second tailings dam, but that second tailings dam will be designed to operate with the new mines that they're going to bring into production. Now, of course, this has unfortunately had a pretty disastrous impact on the share price over the last 6 months, but it's great to see it's back in action. And they've also got a $5 million prepayment from Trafigura, which is a big international copper trader, and Trafigura are, they're supporting the company. They're standing their ground, which is nice. And so we don't know what all the terms are for that, but it just means the company doesn't need to come to the market for cash. In fact, in the 15 years since I IPO'd this company, I don't think it's ever had to come back to the market for cash. They've always been able to borrow money locally. They have a relatively stable operation. Even though they were forced to stop mining, they carried on producing gold because they use what's called a heap leach process. And so they put a lot of material onto this heap leach, and the gold has been leaching out over the last just continually leaches out. So gold production was still there, supporting the cash flow, supporting the business.
How big is that dam? They've applied for a further 7-meter raise in the thing. So explain what a tailings dam is, John, because I didn't realize they're that big. So explain that.
Well, this is where so after you've mined and crushed the material, there's a certain amount of waste material that you need to put somewhere. You can't put it into the pit which you're already mining, although you could put it back into the pit at a later stage. So what you do is you create a tailings dam. That normally involves taking a part of a valley, damming off the end of the valley, and then filling the valley with the material, the waste material, and that's done all over the world. It has to be done carefully. You need to ensure that if there's any toxicity in this material, that it can't leach out, and you have to ensure that the tailings wall will not, so that the dam wall will not collapse. So these things are very robustly built. They've never had a problem with the tailings dam at all. And what happens is the material in the tailings dam solidifies over time, and so it becomes particularly when the water has come out of it, it becomes very stable and just like effectively like the surrounding rock.
Yeah. Okay. That's Anglo-Asian. Okay, so let's go to carry on. A's Arc Minerals. Again, it hasn't really rallied. It's had a very bad sort of performance share price wise. It's down here almost close to lows at 1.76. It hit lows of like at 1.5, 1.6 back in April. What's happening here at Arc Minerals, Johnny?
So they're about to start drilling at their Virgo project in Botswana. Um, they're using some structural geology to try and look under the sand. There's somewhere between 150 and 200 meters of sand cover before they get into what they hope is mineralization. So it is a bit like, you know, it's a bit like a blind man trying to find something on a, you know, using his white stick on a pavement, trying to find a piece of chewing gum, perhaps. It's quite
Trying to pick up a pound
yeah,
coin.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, then you work out whether he's blind or not, won't you?
Yeah.
It's really quite difficult. So yeah, I mean, it's great that they're drilling. They're going to do 3,000 meters of drilling. We've got a couple of different areas which they're targeting, but it is high risk stuff. And there's another company nearby called Kavango also doing similar sorts of work. But they've been there quite a lot longer. And I'm a shareholder in Kavango. I quite like the risk. Somebody's going to discover another copper or nickel mine in the area at some stage in the next, hopefully the next few years. But there's not one for widows and orphans. It's highly speculative stuff.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Kavango is a little selling here today, by the looks of it. Okay. What else? With Eurasia mining. This is prone to. Do you mention Mkango? No, let's go Eurasia first. What's happening in Eurasia? Because this is one of these ones that literally look at that. It can have phenomenal rises and then almost collapses. I mean, similar to some resource companies, I suppose. But
The Eurasia
go on.
stock went up a lot. I think there was quite a lot of chat room noise from what I heard. I don't read the chat rooms myself, um, but there was a lot of well, the company was forced to say they knew of no reason why the stock had gone up so much, but the company has actually sold half of its stockpile in Russia. Now, for me,
Yeah.
that's good news because the fact that they're able to do anything in Russia right now is reasonable news. So they sold that. They've got money for it. They sold it to somebody locally, I believe. That's quite normal. It shows that the material is saleable. It shows that they're able to get cash in. It means that they can use that cash to pay costs within Russia. I mean, sooner or later, hopefully the war in Ukraine will end and the world will start to return towards a more normal place. And Eurasia has a relatively valuable asset, well, a series of assets in Russia. I mean, they're all focused on platinum and palladium. And the ability to be able to sell those concentrates into the local market, for me, is quite important.
Yeah, look, what happened back in 2019? It literally rose 5,000% in a couple of years. That's phenomenal, isn't it? That's
Yes, I think there
wow,
might have been some short positions might have been squeezed out at that time, but
wow.
there certainly was interest from various companies in buying the assets.
Oh
Now, I
yeah,
say
yeah.
this
No, I remember
carefully.
that. Yeah, yeah, I remember that. And
Yeah, and
yeah,
I mean, I knew someone who actually uh, confessed to me sometime after the event that he'd been working on the due diligence for a large South African um, platinum mining company, and actually they really liked the assets. The only reason they didn't make the acquisition was because of its location in Russia. And
yeah,
since then, we believe at least one Chinese company has been very keen to potentially acquire the assets. Whether they're still there is another matter. We simply don't know.
yeah. Anyway, in the last week or so, it's done 100%. In fact, it did do. It spiked up to like what is it? I think almost close to 400%. Wow, 450% pretty much. But now it's come back down. It's up 100% from last couple of weeks.
Well,
Okay.
generally with these things, Justin, there's often no smoke without fire.
No. Yeah, yeah. Okay, Mkango. We didn't. Did you mention those or not? Mkango. No. What's happening with Mkango? Anything?
Yeah, Mkango, they've signed a non-binding MOU with a big magnet recycling business in Japan. So they've got this hypermag business, which is a rare earth magnet recycling business. Actually, I think they're really onto something with this. It's good technology. It's worked up at, I think it's Bristol University, and I think this is the sort of thing. Once you've got something that works, you can then develop that into, in terms of scale, in terms of how well it works, reducing the cost base, etc., etc. And so for me, this is the grain of sand in the oyster. This is what Mkango is going to build its business out of. Now, it also owns a rare earth project in Malawi, but of course, rare earth prices have fallen. Almost all those rare earth projects look difficult to do at, shall we say, current price levels. But the recycling side of things is much better set, partially because everybody in Europe wants to recycle lots of stuff, and partially because this is a process that you can then develop for other things going forward. So once you've got a business that's starting to throw off cash flow and is expanding, etc., then you can use that to actually develop a bigger business, perhaps on the mining side after that.
Yeah. Do you know what you can tell you in a bear market is like some of these companies in a bull market, some of this news being released by the resource companies would have taken the stock up by 100% pretty much. Right now all you're getting is a little blip selling into going back down. So that's you can tell we're in a bear market, can you? It's some good news coming out from some of these companies, and it's not moving. It's not moving at all, is it? Really?
It's pretty much the definition of a bear market. People sell into news.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That, as I say, I think so much of the capital in the UK is in US equities, that Magnificent Seven, and in treasuries. This at some point this will turn around. We don't know when, but it will turn around. But what's the point in using all this AI to enhance things if you haven't got anything to enhance? You still need the metals to build the cars. To make, if you want to make a better car, you still got to have the metals to make the car with in the first place. So everybody has to come back to basics sooner or later. And as we know, with for example, with the copper market, nobody knows where all the copper is going to come from in the next 10 years. The forecasts for new demand for copper are so far ahead of what the world can actually produce today. It's extraordinary. Now, okay, a couple of companies have come out and said, yes, they can produce a bit more copper if they really try. But of course, what we know is a lot of these guys, also a lot of the big boys, also they want to put off the other people coming into the market. Then they're not what they want is higher prices. They don't want to produce a hell of a lot more copper. They just want higher prices for what they already do, and that makes everybody's life easy, and they'll be eating off gold plates again, as they used to do at Goldfields years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Marvelous stuff. Thanks for that, Johnny, and we'll speak you next week.
Thank you, Justin.